And good morning. Wow, that was actually funny timing. I literally just pressed the go button and it turned 10 right on the money there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And I know this is a slightly weird time. Here in the United States, we have not yet switched time, but I understand that most of you fine folks in Europe have switched to not daylight savings time, switched off of daylight savings time. I think that's how it works. So I am yeah, it's slightly different timing here for everybody. But I'm excited to talk about our topic today, and I also have a very special announcement to make as well. So I guess while people are filtering in, I know it always takes a couple minutes for people to come in. How about we open with this? I am really curious. Let me pull up the chat here. I am curious. How many of you have watched the Lord of the Rings series? So why don't you pop that into the chat as you're listening? Hey, Makita, welcome. Come on in. How many have you watched? And I guess we could tack on a second question as far as what is your favorite part of that? So that's and when I say the Lord of the Rings, I also kind of, I guess, I don't know if it's fair to lump in The Hobbit, but I would definitely say that was my favorite of the two. I really liked the acting in especially The Hobbit. That was was just, it's so well done. And I would say definitely or my favorite, unfortunately, is at the end, you know, when they come back, and it's kind of the bittersweet of losing their king, but also of being able to have gotten rid of Smaug. Hey, Rudolphs, good to see you. Come on in, my friend. Welcome. All right, so the question I asked everybody, in fact, I could pop this up on the screen. Let's see here. We'll add this in. You watched. All right. Here we go. We'll add this in here, and it's alphabetical order. There we go. So feel free to answer that question while we get started. Today's topic is checkout. And, you know, as I was thinking about what I was going to talk about, checkout is kind of the Land of Mordor. If you, again, for those of you who have not watched that series or read the book, it's, or books, very, very big books. I'll give you a brief rundown. Oh, nice, Vesh, I like that. So the Lord of the Rings is I think people would put it in the fantasy category, and it goes through this story of, well, actually, The Hobbit is one, and The Lord of the Rings is a separate one. I think there's a couple others. Those are the two I'm familiar with. It basically lives in this more or less fictional fantasy land. I don't know the correct words for some of that stuff. And the first one goes, and they want to reclaim this mountain. These hobbits, which are basically like short people, and with big ears and big feet, and they want to go reclaim this mountain. And then in the second one, again, it's all the same geographical setting, which I think is really cool. Kind of ties it together nicely. In the second one, there's this ring that they have that has these special powers, and they need to get rid of it. But they basically need to get rid of it in Mordor, which is the land of this being that wants the ring back. So it's kind of like the worst place to go have to get rid of it. So anyways, that's kind of the very, very, very basic rundown. There's lots of information on Wikipedia or some other websites about this. So the idea is the Land of Mordor is, you really want to stay out of that at all costs. I mean, you do not want to have anything to do with this if there's any way possible. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, because I think it kind of applies to checkout. Let's jump forward well, actually, I'm just going to start it now, and then I'll talk about our special announcement here in a little bit. The basic idea is the Land of Mordor has what we need. We are kind of terrified to travel there. As you see in The Lord of the Rings, they are terrified to go there. We know that our journey is going to be met with peril and challenge, pain, and there's always that constant idea that we're going to be hit with the complete defeat over us. Unless we're Gollum, which is another character in the story, and I won't talk too much about him, because if you haven't read that, then, or I've seen that. That's definitely an interesting twist to the story. We must place our feet very carefully. And I love this because this analogy, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but the idea is that the checkout is the choke point for making money for a merchant. So it's like one of the most incredible, one of the most important aspects of a website. The whole purchase journey is checkout, which is kind of the most complex, the most difficult part of that. You're going to be hearing some puns as we go through this here today. So get this one. I like this one a lot. My friends and I did a Lord of the Rings marathon yesterday. I ran 26 miles dressed up as Gandalf. That was pretty good, I thought. All right, so we're going to break this into 3 different sections here today, or excuse me, 4 different components here today. How to configure a component, how to customize components, how to get data from other components, and how to push data back up. 4 different segments, and I think it's going to unlock the mysteries of this Land of Mordor, i.e. checkout, so that you can have a good handle as far as what does it take. And I think we can nail this in the next half an hour to 45 minutes to give you a really good understanding of how to customize the checkout. All right, so jumping in here. The one place in Middle Earth we do not want to see any closer, and the one place we're trying to get to, it's just where we can't get. Again, very similar to this checkout. Like, we don't want to touch it. I know many developers who have said they do not touch the checkout. If you want to customize, well, we're going to install the one-step checkout, and that's it. Like, we're not going to touch it. But I don't think that has to be the end of the story for us. It doesn't have to be. We can get there and we can get out of there and deliver a good product in the process. So let's look at some of these light bulb moments that have been helpful for me. And I hope that they will be helpful for you as well. The first one here is actually relatively simple. You have to deal with it. Unfortunately, and I say this unfortunately, there's a lot of people, there's a good number of developers who just don't know how to manage the checkout, how to work with the checkout. And a lot of this is because it feels like we're fighting it. But instead, if we learn to work with the checkout, learn what the checkout expects from us, we will be able to facilitate a really good checkout experience and work through these problems ourselves. So I know that sounds bad to say, but yeah, we have to deal with it. Here is the first, well, that was, I guess, kind of the first one, but here is really the first light bulb moment for me, and that I think makes a big difference in our understanding here. Checkout and UI components are XML. So checkout and UI component XML is basically just a facade. And what I find this to be a light bulb moment is we look at this XML, whether it's in the form of layout XML, or whether we look at it the UI component XML, like on the admin side, and we're like, how does this work? Like, this seems so ridiculously complex. Now, let me take you down here to the default. I'm pulling this up here. Checkout index.xml. Wrong one. That's weird. Looks like I kind of lost my 1 second here. There it is. That is weird. My Stream Deck seems to have gone kaput. I use a Stream Deck. Let's see here. Weird. Let's see here. Let's switch this here. Okay. Yep, I've had some issues with my Stream Deck here recently. So there we go. Problem solved. All right, so here is the checkout index. And actually, this is a great, oopsie, it's supposed to be me in corner. There we go. And I need to select display capture. Great. It doesn't allow the cropping. Well, so we'll just do this one. All right, so sorry, you cannot see me. Oh, well. So this is actually a really good example. We have our Magento checkout block 1 page. We have our template here. And then we have our JS layout. So this JS layout is kind of a somewhat magical, but honestly, there's really nothing special about it. So if we look at this template here, we can see here it says block get JS layout. We open this up and we have our layout processors. So basically what's happening is it's taking everything that we have listed here in right in this whole list right here. This is just like an array. This is all that it is, an array. It serializes it and it pushes it into this basically a JSON list right here. Nothing special about it. That's literally all that it does. So the magic, though, does happen here in this one file right here. Get JS layout. We have our layout processors, and we're going to run that through the layout processor. So all that to say, there is nothing special about this configuration. What ends up happening, and I'm going to show you this in great detail later, is all of this is literally passed to JavaScript objects like the uiComponent system, and objects are initialized that match each one of these component names. So the name component here is magic. We see our component right here. That is magic, yes. However, there's nothing past that that's special. This literally becomes a config object inside of this form input component. That's all that it is to there. Nothing past that. So all that to say, checkout is a facade. The uiComponent XML is a facade. I mean, it basically is designed to sugarcoat or make it syntactic sugar to make it easier for you to change what's in the checkout. That's all. And I'm really serious. That's all that it takes. So another thing is don't use checkoutConfig. As we look in here at our page, one second here. I had an idea. Okay. There we go. And we can do this, and I'll go back to my Stream Deck and change the computer over to me and corner my slide name there. Yeah, okay. There's a great fix. Okay. So I just lost my slides in that process. Congratulations. There we go. Nice. Okay. So I'm going to jump through this breakpoint here. All right. So we can, oops. Yeah, right here. Okay. So we scroll through here. We see that there is checkout fig, not that one. All right, window.checkoutConfig. And we see there's a lot of information that's put out in this file. This is ultimately rendered in one page. We have our, this is our uiComponent information. And then here's our checkout config as well. So, but they're kind of come from the same place. We have our serialized checkout config, this get checkout config. We have our get config provider. And there's a whole bunch of config providers here. And this honestly seems like the natural place to put it. There are a couple of reasons why not to do this. Back to our slides. Checkout config is globally accessible. Thus, anything can write into it. Now, on the surface, that doesn't seem like a huge problem. But as we dive into it, this means that checkout config is not, generally speaking, reactive. So it can be actually difficult to watch for changes being made in this process. The whole idea behind how the checkout has been written is reactivity and the ability for information to simply flow through the system as opposed to basically kind of like object passed by reference. And we're going to talk about this more later. And so understanding this concept is one of the biggest keys to unlocking the idea of checkout, which then starts precluding this checkout config object. We quickly see that that's really not a good solution overall. So do not use checkout config unless just don't use checkout config. Generally, unless you're like modifying something existing, perhaps might be a good reason to, but otherwise don't do that. Okay, so let's talk about another thing that causes a little bit of confusion, and that is this. We have our shipping email here, our shipping email class. I'm going to make this module available, so don't have to worry about trying to copy code down. I've already built this module, and I'm not going to deny that the fact that checkout always is challenging, but once you understand these concepts that I'm talking to you about, checkout is much less challenging. So hope you get it from that perspective. So we have these different perspectives here. We have the squiggly braces and the backtick. So basically, the squiggly braces is equal to ES6 nomenclature. So it's basically something that's executable within this format. And then we have, and of course, Magento does it to keep things backwards compatible. Then we have the $dot, which is equal to this. I should have put a dot after this. So as we see in our example here in the code, we have we're going to execute. We're going to fetch this the object with this reference here. So this dot visibility source, and I'll show you how this all ties together. And then it's being fetched. Here is the location it's being fetched from, and then we're getting the value property from that. So at the end of the day, this seems complex, unintuitive. Yeah, it's not. It's really not that bad. So basically, that's one of the other things that unlocked my understanding there. The registry, and this stuff will make a very big difference for you as you work through this. And here we go. Okay. The registry, you will see a lot of instances where, as I pull this up here, here we go, slides. All right. So you're going to see a lot of instances like in training materials where you can go call require uiRegistry get. That works great. Like that's been a really big lifesaver. We can go fetch a specific component path. However, there's a couple of missing links in this. The first thing is, well, what path do you look for? Okay, well, that one's probably the biggest. So you'll see more training that says, should actually make this a little bit bigger. Here. All right. So registry get, you can do search for index is equal to, well, in this case, telephone, as I already have here visible. All right. Index is telephone. Fantastic. Did you know that there could be multiple UI components with the name of telephone? And that's what has caused me a lot of problems in the past. I built this around the index as telephone. So ultimately, then I can go into here. We'll make this a little bigger. Yeah, so we go into here and we say, we have our index, which is, we see that's basically what we're searching for here. We have our parent name and our name right here. So I can fetch this same one by copying that out and go. Kind of piece of cake. That was fairly simple. We now get access to the same UI class. Awesome. And I literally can throw that into my layout XML and fetch whatever I want. However, there is a problem because there could be multiple telephones with this. And that was actually the problem I faced. One of the problems I faced when building out a module. We're going to talk about what this module is. When we are, how do I say this? When building out this module, I was tuning it to watch for what country was selected. So I wanted this selection, this field selection. We're going to talk about what this module is here in a second. I wanted this field selection to this module to be only visible if a specific country was selected. So I started out by searching for, and we could actually just go through this experiment right here, like this. Index equals checkout. Bingo, done. Okay. So, all right, I got this. Fantastic. Well, then I built it around this, never looking to check the name of this. And that kind of is important to check if you're really, want to take things seriously, which is I know you are, as I try to myself. So checkout steps, billing step, payment, payments list, free for. Okay, well, this is totally not the right one. Well, how would we get the right one? Well, take a look at the slides here. So we have our, we can fetch a list here like this. So we're going to come up to and do filter, and we can now filter for a specific value. So we'll do index checkout. Not checkout. What am I doing here? Index is telephone, or country, probably about the same 6. Nope, not that one. I think I got that one incorrect. The telephone's the same here. So is it country ID? Oh, great. I have to satisfy this here. Yeah, country ID. Okay, so yeah, we have 6. Basically, we have 6 in the checkout here. We have 6. Oh, did I not? Was I not showing you there? There we go. Sorry about that. We literally have 6 address forms in the checkout. 6. Now, if you're wanting to add a new field to the address, you have to do it in 6 places. FYI. Maybe you don't, because there is another concept about that. We'll see if we have time to talk about that. So at the end of the day, there are 6 places this could be referenced, and if we're wanting to target to make this field or whatever customizations we are working with dependent on a specific address form, then we need to find that right one, of course. So the filter, I have literally never seen other people talking about this, and I feel like it's really important to share it with you here. So make sure you write down this syntax here. Filter is very, very important. Use that as much as possible. While we're talking about this, I would like to throw out the comment about the Art of Ecommerce Debugging. I just got a comment here this week about how helpful there was somebody that found it to be, and it was of great help in their career. So just keep that in mind as you are looking to go forward. For individual developers, this is incredibly valuable for you. You will be more valuable to your team. Ultimately, it's it's kind of an interesting paradox for agencies, I will say, because as your developers become more proficient or able to solve problems faster, that does mean your billable hours will go down. So buying this book will potentially hurt your billable hours, but in the long run, it's a good move to make because nobody likes to spend a lot of time fixing bugs. All that to say, let's move on. The project. And if you followed me, you already have probably seen aspects of this project. We've done some explainer videos about this. And this is the how to create a like a shipping email function. So I'm going to select my state here, and we can give you a quick demo of what this looks like. So I select my state here, and based off of the state, I have an additional email for tracking numbers, and I can add multiple in here. So Joseph plus test at SwiftOtter.com. All right, so it's programmer art. I understand at this point, but this is the basic. Oopsie, we have some validation going on here. This is the basic idea of this process. So we see it's contingent on a selection here. So Uruguay does not have this option, although we still do see a hello. And I'd put this in here. We're going to talk about reactivity. And I put this in here as a quick demonstration. You see, I just typed in Joseph, and it says hello, Joseph, down here. So pretty simple there. But the idea is that we can upload set specific email addresses, and then shipment confirmations will go to each one of those individual email addresses. This is a legit requirement that we have built out for one of our customers. So at the end of the day, I feel like this is a fairly practical process here. So again, like I said at the beginning, I have divided this out into 4 different categories, and let's review these categories and then jump in here. First, we're going to talk about how to configure a component like this, how to customize components, how to get data from other components, and how to push data back up. So step number 1. This one is a little bit interesting because it's not just a static setup. We have a UI component that spawns other UI components. So we have, this is kind of the parent UI component, and then each one of these text boxes is a separate child UI component. And so it adds a layer of complexity that I hope will be helpful in our understanding of how this all works. One of the biggest challenges is actually looking at how things relate together. So I'm going to show you this here, and then we're going to dive into the code, and we're going to kind of switch back and forth. So I basically kind of like an annotated version of the code versus not. One thing here, let's see here. Valashev, maybe? Is that how you pronounce your name? I apologize if not. The other YouTube link was not working. So I'm going to take a quick break here, and let's see here. Interesting. Well, we have a problem with our YouTube link. All right, well, looks like it's like, thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Matt, for getting that dealt with. That's always frustrating when that happens. I am sorry about that. Okay, so let's keep going on this. So for those of you that missed it, I talked about some really good stuff here earlier. So make sure you do get back in there and take a look at some of the things that unlocked my understanding. All right, so let's jump back over here. I want to talk about a couple of these values here, and then we're going to take a look at the code. So this is my excerpt from checkout index. So this is our checkout index layout handle, and we have before shipping method form. So basically, it's just a matter of going through, figuring out, where do we want to throw this? Like, we can literally scroll through this, and yes, it's a massive Christmas tree. Yes, it seems overwhelming, completely non-understandable sometimes, but sometimes we can probably figure it out. So for example, we see shipping address field set. Well, if I want this to be before that, well, I see before shipping method form. So it's not entirely obtuse. We have address list, additional addresses. These are kind of like regions that you can throw children into. Wait, that didn't sound right. You would never want to throw a child around. Okay. Throw objects into. That would sound better. So what I like to do in some of these cases, well, in this case, and I find I feel it takes a little extra time, but ultimately I feel like it's worth it in the long run. I literally copy the entire file, and then I go through and I collapse and I delete out these values that I don't want, because ultimately, if I don't get the structure right, I'm kind of screwed to begin with. So, and then I'm going to waste a whole bunch of time trying to get the structure right. So if I take the structure and just delete out the sections I don't want, at the end of the day, it's going to work a little better. And I honestly have not had structure related problems since I have started implementing this practice. So here is the file that it's a beauty. I mean, folks, ladies and gentlemen, this is not really a beauty. It looks like a piece of garbage. I mean, really, if we were to face it, it would fail most every code review. And I don't know this, but whatever. This is what has to happen. Like, I'm not aware of a way to clean this up. And wait till you see the PHP version of this. That's even worse. So we have our before shipping method form. We have our children object in here, and we are inserting a new item here. This component is magical. It definitely is. But literally everything else that we're passing into it is just setting values on an object, a JavaScript object. That's all that's happening. And I want to drive that home. What I believe has happened so much with UI components is it looks like it's some type of magical system. And at the end of the day, I'm here to prove this right now, there's no magic to it. In fact, that's maybe if I could even use this word beauty of it, it's hard to say UI components are beautiful. They're not. They're ugly. They're ridiculously ugly. But there's a silver lining behind every cloud. Well, behind a good number of clouds, especially when the sun's out. And I think this is one of them. It's simple. It's ridiculously simple once you kind of peel back these layers and begin looking at what's actually involved under the covers here. So let's take a look back at our slides. And we have our, let me double check here. Okay. So this is our UI component layout here. I want to make a couple call outs here. We have our original component. This is the one we're embedding it inside. Here is the item name, which ultimately is mapped out to the index. Now, do you remember me talking about index previously? I'm sure you do. So it is literally mapped out to index. We have our JavaScript object. This is what the type of object that is being loaded. And these are key values that are being set in there. Watch this. Watch this. So hopefully you see how this kind of works together, but let me put onto the screen something a little bit different. We have our component type, which ultimately this entire object, this UI class, is the initialized version of this component path. Okay, so ignore countries for right now. We'll talk about countries here in a little bit. Remember the index we talked about? This is the name of the component. We'll just jump back and forth here. Our index right here, the shipping email, that is found right here. We have our renderer details found right here. Guess where they're found? Renderer details right here. We have our template. Template is listed right here. We can just go back and forth. These values are all explicitly found right here. I hope that makes sense, because we're not talking about anything lofty or grandiose here. I mean, literally, this is initializing JavaScript objects. And once you get your mind around that, the whole system, all the complexity starts crumbling apart pretty quick. Now, there's a couple other things we'll talk about here in this process that I think will make those walls fall down even faster and literally give you a underground route straight through Mordor to the mountain. So yeah, this is going to be this is the good stuff here, folks. All right. So let me okay. So once we have, let me go back to our slides. Once we have our this, again, the layout tree, as we saw earlier, is literally converted into an array. That's all that happens. And the values that we specify in this array are used to populate the object. So if we need to set to pre-populate a value, like in our example here, a list of email addresses like such, we can pre-populate those. We don't have to use checkoutConfig. All we have to do is add these to our UI component. You say, well, Joseph, that's not possible because you can't change values in layout XML. Duh, yeah, you're right. 100%. Screw it. I totally blew it there. But actually, I'm going to show you how to do that. And I think you already know the answer on this. I'll show you that in here in a second. Let's talk quickly about uiComponent initialization. And I'm going to show you how this works. So we're going to open this up. I'm going to set a breakpoint in init observable. We're going to jump back up the stack and see how this works. So let's come over here into sources. Drop that down a little bit. All right. Init observable. Bingo. Right here. Let's refresh our page. Nice. Oopsie. Let's see here. Front page. Oh, I think I must have hit something. Keyboard combination. And yes, I did. Try again, Joseph. Sometimes this is Yash. You had a question. Is this a PowerPoint slide? I'm not quite fully following you on this one. So I think it was about a previous thing I stated. So maybe if you could give me a little more context again, that would be helpful. All right. Here we go. Now, so call stack, as I'm sure you use all the time, is very helpful, very important. So this is our element that we inherit. We see these different values here, and init observable, module, stateful, links, and unique. Init links is also very helpful, as we're going to talk about here in a little bit for understanding how stuff works. I have init observables to be able to fire up these observables or reactive properties. Oh, yeah. So Yash, this UI component injection here, this was a slide that I built here. I'll show you to again. So, and I'll talk a little bit while you're looking at that slide. So this is where we set up our observables. Pretty simple, pretty easy, not much to it. But I find this as a easy way to hook in, if we want, as we see request modifiers, we'll talk about that later, etc. So it's a great way, just a good place to put initialization information into this process. So with that, we have our UI component almost initialized, but I want to take a quick look at this class. And just as I was showing you earlier, we have our component here and all the information. So we have our emails being pre-populated, I believe. And yeah, as I showed you earlier, this is all this information. Now we can step back through the call stack, and we can see right here, I believe, is we have the UI component arguments, initial apply. Let's see, not that one. It was, I think it was here that the values are actually created, they're passed actually to this object. So all that to say, it's pretty simple, folks. It is pretty simple, and I don't say that in a unkind way at all. Like, oh, you should already know this. No, it's taken me a long time to figure some of these basics out. And once you do, it's just going to totally unlock your understanding, which makes me really excited. To be frank, for me, it's hard to sit down and to dedicate the time necessary to get some of this stuff cracked. But that's what I'm hopeful this ninja training here does that just for you if you haven't already. had the opportunity to do this. Okay, very good. So that was how to configure a component. Now let's move on how to customize components. This is going to be pretty short because the possibilities are endless, but the route is pretty easy. So let's go ahead and refresh this page. And I do have a PHP example on how to do this. Okay, so if we back up here, it's always good to back up. We have our layout processors here. This is literally DI dependency injection here. We have our layout processors, which should be a list of composite. No. Let's see here. Layout processors. Here we go. Layout processor interface. There we go. We have our layout processor interface. We have one method on here. We have a whole bunch of layout processors. Well, I guess a good portion of those are interceptors. Feel free to look through these. These are great inspiration. Yeah, nothing too spectacular about them, but I did include one myself. So we see our DI.xml file here. Actually, I threw it in front end. Layout processors, shipping email insertion. So the idea here is when somebody goes to this checkout page, if they have already, say, for example, added their email address in here, well, then it should automatically be populated for this new order. Or, I mean, you could make it dependent on the address, or there's a lot of ways to do this. Although I guess if it was dependent on the address, it would be better to put this in the address area as opposed to the shipping email. So this would be technically per quote or per customer, ideally. So how do we figure out this stupid long tree? Now, I did some looking, and there was a tool that allowed us to be able to swap these values out much easier. For the life of me, I can't find it. So basically, I set a breakpoint here, and this is what I find is usually works easiest. JS layout, and so basically just drop down through this list here to find this information, step config, shipping, etc. For shipping email, etc. Shipping email, and then you can copy value as let's see here, or copy path. Excuse me. So I right click and hit copy path. It was kind of cut off at the bottom there, and we can do JS. All right, here we go. Basically sets the entire value right here. And we can then add whatever values we want to the end of this. Now, remember how I showed you earlier that there was a emails property in there? Well, that emails property exists because of this value that I set right here. Countries property exists because of this country's value I set right there. That's all there is to it. Obviously, you could create entire components in this process. You could delete components, and that's what this layout processor is designed to do. That's literally all there is to customizing components. The power is entirely in your hand. And you can do whatever you want to do with it. So modifying data is fairly simpler with the layout processor interface. Continuing on, how do we get data from other components? This one will seem like one of the more challenging and tricky segments, but I don't think it has to be. So let's see what it takes in order to get data from other components or pass data to other components. Now, the first thing is we have to understand about this observable or reactive variables. This is a different concept than we probably almost ever talk about in PHP. I think there's some idea, a little bit of it in some cases, but not really. The idea is that instead of acting like, okay, let me back up. In PHP and JavaScript, values are scalar values are passed or are not passed by reference. So basically, if I say, name equals Joseph, and then I pass name into a method, well, we basically have a new instance of Joseph. It's basically copied. The string Joseph is copied, or the same for numbers and Boolean. However, objects are basically passed by reference. So we initialize an object, and we can pass it around in the system. And we would have to take a specific action to actually copy or clone it. So the idea is with observables, we can make an object, scalar value, or whatever, be able to have its state be centralized and stay there. But then other aspects of the system can listen to changes in that value. Or, for example, we can print this value out in a text box or like a HTML tag, and that value automatically changes. So it's like even better than passing objects by reference, because ultimately, if we were to set the value, let's say, render out some HTML, and, use what object.firstName, it still ends up being a scalar value passed to that HTML. Versus when it's reactive, in the case of Knockout and ultimately way better Vue and React, it then ends up being able to be automatically updated or pushed over in that direction, which I think is pretty cool. And once you grasp and once you figure out how that works into your workflow, I find it pretty hard to want to go back. I find myself continuously reaching for these reactive, and maybe I do a little too much. I don't know. So ultimately, let's look at the code that I have written here in this. So we have init observable. We have observe emails, visible, and first name. So I have emails loaded in here as an array. Obviously, this is going to be overridden before it's turned into an observable. And one thing to note here in React is observable is literally a type. It is literally an object. And so it's a little, if emails is this.emails is overwritten later, so we say this.emails equals new array, that observable goes away. So you have to there's a certain way to set these values. So we call this observe emails, visible, and first name. And those values are now observable. Let's go into the front end and let's say this country changed. No, let's still throw it in the beginning here. So we're going to refresh the page. And by the way, a really quick plug for Den. This is the environment I am using. We have basically made it a fork of the Warden environment, which is the most popular Magento development environment out there. We've made a fork of that and have invested a tremendous amount, ultimately, of money in making sure this is a fast, very reliable environment. It's super fast on Mac, on the M1 chips, or the ARM chips. So yeah, I love it. I use it all the time, and I'm really grateful for Navarre, Wukash, their hard work in maintaining this and making it such a great platform. Okay, so let's keeping in the spirit of this, let's jump back into here. We have this, and we see our emails is a type of observable. So we could ultimately set this.emails is equal to an array, and that's going to take away the observable properties. But we have emails. We can get that. We have this.emails. Again, pretty simple. So we can also do this.emails.push Joseph1 at SwiftOtter. By the way, there's just no secret about my email address. So we can see that we pushed another email into this list. Again, pretty simple. Okay, so moving on. This is an interesting, and this is helpful here. So we can get the values just like I showed you, using, instead of calling this visible or this emails, we put a parentheses after that. We can get this in the code. We can also let's see here. Whoopsie, shipping email container. We can also, like I showed you earlier, when I put my name in here, like my first name in here, I literally can't have it rendered out right here. Well, the funny thing is, you're going to say Joseph, and I'm going to get to this in here in a second. So the question will be answered. How can you get the first name when that value is not in your object? Well, we're going to talk about that here in a second. But for the time being, we have data bind text. We can put HTML as first name, and it renders it out automatically. So I can run this, and we'll do Joseph. See, hello, Joseph, down here. That's how it works. Pretty straightforward. Now, what's not quite so straightforward is getting this information out. So let's take a look at what this is. So what's an import? Basically, an import pulls a value from another UI component and throws it into our UI component. As simple as that. This is, again, like you saw, I was pulling the first name off of the shipping address, and I was rendering it into mine. There's a bazillion number of different uses for this. You can link whatever you want, wherever you want, however you want. 3 steps to be able to do this. First, we create a class variable. Then we add an imports declaration. Then we observe the variable, and we are done. I have tried without these 3 steps, or like omitting like the first or the last step, one of these steps here, and that just doesn't work. So maybe I'm missing something. I don't know, but I find it works with all 3 of these steps here. So let's look at the code. We have our first name, class variable. We're observing it here, but this is the most important part here. Importance. You got what I'm saying there, a little bit of pun. We have our imports and we have our first name. So we're basically mapping first name over to here. So this value is mapped to the first name right here. Now, there is technically a checkout provider uiComponent, which contains more or less all the data. You could load from that. However, I decided to take the more obtuse route by fetching directly from this value here. Now, the long term, this is not a good strategy. I will say that very, very loud and clear, because you might not always have a shipping address. If this is a virtual order, only virtual products in there, then you will not have a shipping address, which could cause some problems here for this. Just keep that in mind. I put this in here though to illustrate how this process would work. So again, what I did was I did a search for index is first name. Find all the 6 that are listed here. I think it was the last one. Yep, shipping address, first name. I went down, I literally copied this path out. That's all that it takes. Copy this out. You can see the parent name, what other links that it's doing, and you can see the checkout provider here. This is the better approach, likely. Shipping address dot first name. That would be probably more stable long term, but I show this as more of a demonstration and an example. So we do this, and then it magically takes it away from us, for us. Super simple. It's hard to elaborate on that just because there's not much else that it takes there. Moving on, listens. We can have a method that is triggered when we have a value that's changed. Now, you'll notice here in my code, this is kind of the next line coming up here, that I use a different nomenclature. I could have used that same nomenclature up here and inserted this value into our visibility source into our original component configuration. We can do that. I just did this to be a little bit more literal and kind of get your feet wet. But ultimately, it might make a little bit more sense to do something along those lines here. So we have our this.visibility source, and we're going to get this component and then get the value from it and trigger that to be changed. Again, pretty simple. Ultimately, what happens is that country changed triggers this value here. So, it triggers this. Question time. Ashan asks if the recording will be made available for this session. Yes, it'll be 100% available. I am not quite sure what we're going to do about these two, about it breaking up. I don't know if it started on a new YouTube video or what. But worst case, we'll download it, merge it back together, and pop it back up, and you will have a recording either way. Okay, so let's set a breakpoint here in for country changed. And we'll drop down. I'm in the US, so I will select US for myself. And then we have this visible. And so notice we are setting our visible, observable value to be whether the countries that index of, so basically the list of countries we want this to be visible for, is greater than 0. So if there's a match, it's going to set this value to be visible. Quite simple. All right, run that, and we should have our additional email for tracking numbers shown below. All right, well, at the risk of feeling like we're about to leave Mordor too soon, there's one more important topic that we must talk about here this evening. And this is now we get more into the back end side. This is probably my favorite. I just love Gandalf. He is such a wise figure in the Lord of the Rings movies and, well, the whole series, I guess. And yeah, I really like his presence. It's always a comforting presence, which they do such a good job of portraying. Moving forward. the question is, how do we get this value back up to the checkout? There are two API functions for placing an order. We see that basically the difference is whether it's guest carts or cart/mine. With guest carts, obviously, is a cart ID. Otherwise, it's payment information. They both go to the same place. Now we can go look at that. I think you should be able to know where to find that in the code. It's pretty simple. Just search for that. You'll find webapi.xml, and then you're going to then you'll be able to find the actual interface for that. One thing to call out here, though, is that Web API REST is critical to remember. If you're taking a test, there are usually questions on those tests about the area. In relation to placing an order, it is as a REST method. Now, you'll notice in my code here, let's see here, right here, that we have payload.extension attributes. Payload.extension attributes as shipping email. Extension attributes are accessible to us to extend the API, and I hope that you take advantage of this. Extension attributes, one cool feature of this is more on the admin side or other areas. You can limit extension attributes from being returned based off of how, based off of permissions, which is a really helpful feature here. So extension attributes, we have our, in our code, we have our add email. We are adding in, we're setting these extension attribute values. We have our payment interface, which is associated with payment method. And we have our payment method right here. So it all maps together. Just jump in the debugger, and it's pretty easy to say this or to see this through. And then finally, one other quick call out is on the success page. As you're debugging, getting into the success page, etc., or debugging the success page itself, you can look into the success controller, and there is a line that you can comment out that will prevent the session from being cleared. Make sure whenever you do comment a line out, and I call this out in the book, make sure that you comment it so you can search through your code base. If something is totally whacked out on your code base and it works in production or on an integration environment, you can go through and say, oh, that I added that comment in before. Just you have a comment, your common phrase that you search for, and it'll tell you all your modifications you've made into your core composer files. And so with that, here's another pun. Sorry, I had to say this ahead of time. I'm throwing a Hobbit party. It's a little get together. I hope you enjoyed that one. There's a couple others. There's some really, just do a search for Lord of the Rings puns. There's some good ones out there. Really, really good ones out there. Okay, so questions. Does anybody have questions? I'd be happy to answer them. I have a couple more minutes. Vladimir, I didn't make it to the beginning of the stream, maybe as you said, but I'm wondering if you'd have a course for the front end certification. It's something we've definitely talked about. At this point, we do not have plans to do that. Mark Schust has a great course for the front end, which would be a great option, I would say there. And so, yeah, I would make that as a offering in the meantime before we're able to get something done. If we do that, it's for us, it's a matter of seeing it takes a lot of time. It takes a huge amount of time. Right now, our priorities are, and let me just jump to this. I did not say this at the beginning. Let's see here. Come on. Takes forever to scroll over here. Okay. Because I am pretty excited about November 16th, we are releasing another new course. And this one is going to be a good one. But it's going to be departure. So we already had one departure from this, and that is the Art of Ecommerce Debugging course. But we have another departure from this, and you're going to see more departures from this. There is somebody who's just absolutely brilliant who is working on helping me build courses. So he puts in like all the thought, all the work into this, and we work together a little bit, but he is absolutely brilliant, has a phenomenal agency background. He has done a huge amount of like consulting, worked at several very high profile agencies. And as such, he is a great resource to have on the team here. I'm incredibly lucky to be able to work with him. Name is Chris Nanninga. And his first, he built out the professional developer course, which is a fantastic course. Helped me finish up expert developer, which is another tremendous course. But now we are going to be releasing a new course on November 16th for GraphQL. And the idea behind this is Master Architect, there's a ton of GraphQL on this, and having a great understanding of GraphQL is going to help you pass that test. Now, there's a lot of other uses for this, like PWA, etc. GraphQL is not going away. In fact, it's going to only become more useful, more popular, and more important. So we have a course coming out on November 16th about this, and I'm really, really excited about that. So we have more coming out. Ultimately, at this point, our roadmap looks to be GraphQL. The next course we're going to release is one about testing, mastering all different types of Magento related testing. And then we're working on the cloud materials as well. So to be really honest, Master Architect is up in the balances for us. It is really, really difficult. And so the question we have to face is, is it even physically possible to create training material that would help somebody who's at an expert level get to the mastery level based off of the way that test was built? That's the question we're having to work through. But regardless, GraphQL and testing are two very critical parts on that test. And we are building out training for both of those. So it should theoretically be more possible to pass that test once people get certified, or once people get these courses under their belt and they have mastered these topics. So looks like I don't see any other questions about this. I hope this was helpful today. It was great having all of you on here. Definitely was, I'm excited about hopefully unlocking unlocking checkout for you so that it is not like a traverse through the Land of Mordor. We are able to comfortably approach it and successfully navigate this interesting land. Take care. And again, I'm sorry for the problems we had with our live stream today. Hopefully it'll be better for next time. And yes, guess what? Chris Nanninga is going to be giving our next talk here in December. And it's amazing it's already December. So take care. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will talk later.